G'day Bomber fans, the round 1 teams are out, they just released before, so this is a little COVID edition of the squad reaction. I'm going to film this and then go straight back to sleep like I've been doing the last few days. Hopefully I'm sane enough to comprehend this team, because on face value, I don't know, I find it a little weird personally. I haven't seen any reactions from the community just yet because I'm recording this straight away, so I don't know if this is just me being picky or not. But it's a weird one. Let's get into it. Let's look at the team we've picked to face the Hawks. I'll also discuss their 23 at the end of the video as well, for the rogue Hawks fans out there. Alrighty, so line by line as it's listed: Andy McGrath, Ben Mackay, and just to please you guys, Dyson Heppel. Apparently he missed the official preseason game because of personal reasons. He wasn't dropped, but he has looked a beat off the rest of the boys from what I've seen this preseason. Now, if there is one thing we know about Heppel, though, lately at least, it's that he loves to prove us wrong. 12 months ago, we were writing him off and complaining about his place in the team, and he ended up having a pretty good season. I trust him to be that capable defender, but also that mature veteran that we need in the absence of Ridley, who is usually our general. I think a calm head is needed down there without Ridley, and Heppel hopefully can be that player. There are players I personally would have preferred to see instead, but I don't think the selection of Heppel is a disaster like many of you are probably saying. I haven't seen the response, but I just know Heppel is probably copying it a lot right now. I'm not thrilled about him being in the side, but I also don't really know who you can bring in of his role instead. I know Laverty is absent, but that isn't a like-for-like player, and Roberts and Lawal just aren't ready yet. Alright, Redmond, Reed, and Kelly. I'm kind of glad Kelly is in this team, not gonna lie. He was the guy I was really hoping to see get fit for this game, aside from Draper and Hobbs, obviously, who aren't present. But Kelly gives us a lot of versatility. He isn't going to give up on you anytime soon, and he has looked really impressive from all accounts this preseason, so it's good to see him in the side. He is definitely a magnet you can move around a lot as well, which is what Scott wants to be doing. But in saying that, he obviously missed a practice match, but that hamstring injury was only a week-long ordeal, whereas Hobbs and Draper and Shield were on the sidelines for the better part of 3 to 4 weeks at least. I know it's a bit weird to see Kelly miss the practice game and get up for this, whereas Hobbs and Draper are rested, but I think that's the reason why, just because his injury was much shorter. Draper and Shield's injuries have been a year long so far, so that makes sense to me, selecting him over the other guys. His fitness wouldn't have taken as big of a hit as theirs. But back to the defense, it looks pretty small. Cox is on the bench. I expect him to play Ridley's intercept role. It does mean we have 3 2-meter players back there, which I'm a little worried about. They have some dangerous forward level firepower, Ginnivan, Moore, Bruce, and Watson, so I'm a bit worried about how we manage that, their little mosquito fleet. I think it's an area they can potentially exploit, which is why I'm a bit confused about Laverty's absence, if I'm being honest. He's versatile enough to match up on Gunston or Bruce, tall or small. Now we're a bit one-dimensional, and if we get caught out, we have to switch opponents with people that don't really match. It probably won't be as fluid is what my thinking is. Alright, midfield, Sartas on the wing, Caldwell guts, Martin other wing. Martin will play defense though. I reckon Martin and Kelly can be swapped. I think we'll see Kelly on the wing, and Dersma as well on the bench. So that gives us a few wing options, which is good, I guess, even though I personally wouldn't like to see Sartas on that wing. I think his outside use is just not to that level yet, but you guys know my thoughts about that. Goldstein, Setterfield, Merritt, obviously Parrish is a big loss, and the fact Hobbs isn't fit is annoying as well, because you don't have that replacement. You look at our engine room, it's actually borderline a bit of a worry. Well, it is a worry now. The guy's missing. You've got Draper, Hobbs, Shield, and Parrish. That is hard to manage, but I think we'll do our best, and it's a good time for it to be a worry, because we're only in round 1, obviously. This would be more of an issue if it was later in the year. Durham is at half forward, but he will play in the guts. I expect Stringer to spend time in stoppages. Maybe Perkins as well can float through and try and find some form. So there's a little bit of depth, not too much though. Forward line, Durham, Langford, Perkins, Stringer, Wright, and Gresham, with a few on the bench as well. You got Jones, Guelphy, and Menzies. I suspect one of the latter two will end up being the sub. If I had to guess, it would be Menzies, just because he is that small burst of energy player. Guelphy goes missing less. He's more consistent throughout games, but he also doesn't reach the heights that Menzies does at his best, or at least not in recent times. I'll go through the bench really quickly again. Cox, Jones, Dersma, Guelphy, and Menzies, obviously. And the emergencies, Draper, Laverty, and Hind. Draper being named an emergency is a bit puzzling for me. I would hate for us to play him because we have to with a last minute change. He is either ready or he isn't. This isn't a guy that you can play hurt. It's not a It's not I can't think of an example, but he's a high impact player who needs his body to be near 100%, and the fact that he is an emergency and not listed shows he clearly isn't ready to play AFL footy. If he was ready to play AFL footy, he'd be in the best 23, so why have him as an option for a replacement? For me, that is the most annoying part of this whole team. It is round 1. This is stuff you see happen late in the year when a season is on the line, but it is round 1 right now. We haven't even played a game and we're toying with the possibility of risking him. That just frustrates me. This isn't a player you can risk. Even if he doesn't play, I think the precedent is set right now. It sets a precedent that you can't really understand as a fan base or even as a playing group. Think about Nick Bryan right now, who is being told that an injured or unfit Sam Draper is more likely to play than you. I think that is just silly and borderline, I won't say toxic, what's the right word? I guess harmful for the playing group, in my opinion. I don't know if I'm overreacting, but that's just my thoughts. Alright, enough of the rant, let's talk about some things I do and don't like, starting with positives. Stringer is playing his first round 1 game since 2020. You got Cox, Reed and Perkins all playing together. I would guess the last time they did that was back in 2021. A lot of guys usually battle injuries are in good nick as well. That is good to see. Even the guys missing, Draper, Hobbs, Parrish and Shield, could all play next week or the week after, and Ridley isn't far behind them, you would think. I like the fact that we've been able to cover injured players somewhat. I think we're still a bit lean in defence without Ridley, and obviously, I've said it before, but I personally would have preferred to see Laverty play over Heppel against a mixy forward line, but I'm not judging the Heppel selection based on that. I think Scott probably has a plan in mind. But in the midfield, we have some big bodies to give us defensive accountability in the absence of our best clearance midfielders. We have Goldstein in the ruck on his own, mind you. We haven't done that in a while. But that's exactly what you want to see from a replacement ruck. No Draper, that is okay. We have Goldstein who can ruck a game on his own. But the negatives for me, I don't know. I just found myself sighing and groaning while reading this 23, and it wasn't because I have COVID. I've already spoken about Laverty and Draper on the emergencies. Hind, last in the pecking order behind Guelphy and Menzies, though. I just don't see why that's the case. Guelphy and Menzies are such similar players in what makes them good and worthwhile to the team, whereas Hind gives you a different trick to use late in games if needed. He is chaotic, he can play defence if you need. If we're getting torn up by those small forwards, you can throw him back there. In my opinion, he should be the sub, not Guelphy or Menzies like it probably will be. I would have liked to see him come in for either of those guys, realistically, I don't care who, because he's been performing better than them in the match sims we've seen as well. Same goes for Perkins, he should be at risk in my eyes. He was shocking against St Kilda and even worse against the Cats. If he doesn't have a bounce back game, I hope we see some selection pressure put on him. The guys missing, little asterisks on screen for those with injuries. I'm including emergencies in here too, and I've only listed the 10 most high profile on screen. Keep in mind Baldwin, Davey, Hayes, some others are not on screen, but they're missing. Draper, Parrish, Hobbs, Shield, they're all missing because of injury or fitness, although, again, Draper's situation is so strange to me. I won't go over that again, though. I won't waste your time. Wiedemann, Ridley, Laverty, Hind, Bryan, and Caddy. Caddy at the end, who is still a bit raw since that back knock, so we won't see him. Look, realistically, we have some big names out. You can't avoid that. It's not an excuse, though. On paper, our team is better than Hawthorn's, in my opinion. So let's have a look at their team. Alrighty, Hawthorn, our rivals. I'll go through it faster. Impey, Frost, Scrimshaw, Massimo. Welcome back, Massimo. Sicily and Mackenzie. Mass in defence would be fantastic for us. Obviously, he's not a very good defender, but he will play wing, unfortunately. Mackenzie will also be higher up the ground to help their ball use. You got McDonald, Newcomb, Weddle. Weddle will be back in defence. Chol, Moore, Watson, Hardwick up forward as he's been all pre-season. Mitch, Lewis and Ginnivan. You got Reeves, Ward and Nash in the guts. Bench time, you got McGuinness, who could be tagging Merritt, Warple, Gunston, Bruce and Amon. Don't ask me who the sub will be. All in all, a better team than we saw last year. That backline's a bit stinky, but I think realistically on paper, we are the better team. It all comes down to how the game plays out. Let me know what you think down below, guys. Are you pleased with this round 1 team? Are you, like me, and a bit confused or annoyed? Hopefully that's the case so I don't look silly. That's all though. Round 1 is just a few days away now for us. Big game. Get out to it. Still tickets available. Like if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you're new, and go Bombers.